I have lived in this town for the better part of a decade. There isn't much to say about a town like this that I'm sure you haven't already heard before. It often reminded me of those towns from those old films and TV shows. Quaint yet charming. That was partly what drew me in to live here. I had been looking for a new place to live, and after living the adventurous lifestyle, I decided it was time to put down some roots. I had passed through this town quite a few times during my road trips. Every time I did, I found myself admiring it more and more. When I finally had the opportunity to move here, I took it. For the most part, this place has been great. Clean air that seems to refresh your lungs with every breath. Kind people who seem to go out of their way for you, despite being a stranger. To sum everything up, this town was peaceful. Then something happened at the beginning of this month. It all started with a broadcast on TV. During one of the news reports, the television cut to black. At first, I thought that the cable had simply dropped out, but a moment later the screen flickered and changed. On the screen appeared to be one of those national emergency broadcast things. You know, the ones with the loud screeching tones. However, this one didn't have any such tone, which clearly stuck out in my mind as odd. It was just a silent image of text that read "Emergency Broadcast System." The image lasted for around 5 minutes before a new bit of text flashed across the screen. It had only 3 words, and at the time, I wasn't sure what it meant. It said, "They are coming." I thought this might have been a hoax, some prank orchestrated by some kids on the internet. I bet they thought they'd get a rise out of people by putting some cryptic wording up. Shortly after those words appeared, the screen flickered once again, and the news broadcast returned. I sat there confused for the most part before eventually continuing with my evening. The next day at work, I asked one of my coworkers if he had seen the bizarre broadcast on the TV last night, and he told me he hadn't. I was beginning to think I must have just imagined it, as it was a strange alert after all. 2 weeks passed by without anything of note happening. The whole message was already fading from my memory. Until one night, I was lying in bed watching some late night TV. I was slowly drifting in and out of consciousness when my TV flickered once more. I lazily watched as my screen went to black, and then the text slowly appeared. "Emergency Broadcast System" in glowing white letters stretched across my screen. I opened my eyes a bit more and stared as my senses slowly started coming back to me. The image was still as silent as before, and I waited to see the same message as before. The screen flickered after a few minutes, and then the message appeared. This one was slightly different than the one I had seen previously. This one, however, made me feel much more uneasy. It said, "They are here." Then, the same as before, the screen flickered and my TV show once again reappeared. I just sat there staring at my TV, not watching whatever show was playing as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. Just then, I saw a bit of movement out of the corner of my eye. I glanced over at my wall, which had light being cast from the street lamp outside on it. It looked like something was moving outside. I'll admit, going from seeing that strange message to immediately seeing movement outside was unsettling. I remained stationary in my bed as I stared at my wall. Although the shadow was distorted by the light, it seemed like it was a person standing outside. My mind tried to rationalize that it was probably some late-night dog walker or something. Then, the figure which had previously been moving stopped. I stared motionless as the minutes steadily ticked by. After nearly 30 minutes of looking at the shadow, I got out of bed and slowly walked to my window. I gently peeled back the curtain and peeked out towards the street. It took my eyes a few seconds to adjust to the mix of light and dark outside my window. When my vision cleared, I saw it. Someone was standing almost directly underneath the street lamp outside. Whoever it was seemed to be looking up at the light itself. It was as if they were utterly entranced by the light. After a few moments, their head began to lower away from the light. I was silently praying that the person would just move on and leave. Then, their head twisted around to face me. In an instant, the streetlight overhead popped, and the street was consumed by darkness. By that point, I already had my back flush against the wall next to the window. My heart was thudding in my chest like a hammer. The face I saw moments before the light extinguished was something I'll never forget. It was just two floating eyes and a large, jagged smile. I say floating because the rest of its head was just darkness. A crude example would be like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. How his eyes and smile would just appear in midair before the rest of his body. I wanted to go back to bed and just hope that what I had seen was nothing more than a trick of the mind. Before I could do that, however, I had to make sure my entire house was locked up tight. With cautious footsteps, I crept out into my living room. I tiptoed my way to my front door. I checked to make sure the door was bolted up tightly. I made my way towards my back door and found it just as secure as I had left it earlier. Feeling a bit more at ease, I headed back towards my bedroom. Just as I entered my living room from my kitchen, I got a feeling in the back of my mind. A feeling of danger. I turned, and through the nearby window, those eyes and smile were pressed against the glass. I quickly ducked towards my wall. Whoever it was just standing on the other side. What was odd was that I could clearly see the eyes and teeth despite the lack of light around. They didn't appear to be searching. Usually someone that is looking for something is moving their eyes and head around. This thing wasn't. It was just staring straight ahead at nothing. The same smile and the same blank eyes. I quietly moved to my bedroom and retrieved my phone. I then tiptoed into my bathroom, which was the most secure room in my house. Clutching my phone in my hand, I dialed 911. My phone only rang once before silence filled the receiver. I was just about to hang up when a crackling sound started emitting from the speaker. It sounded unlike anything I had ever heard before. Before I could finish, I ended the call and shut my phone off entirely. I waited in the bathroom, sitting on that cold tile floor for hours. I could feel my fatigue tugging at my eyelids, but somehow my fear managed to keep me alert. I would occasionally peek out of my bathroom door to see if it was light out yet, and every time I did, it was still pitch black out. Then, after yet another hour of sitting there, I heard something. I expected to hear the shattering of glass or the splintering of wood as whoever it was forced their way into my home, but that's not what I heard. I heard the sound of creaking floorboards coming down my hallway. I held my breath as I stared at my darkened bathroom door. The creaking stopped directly on the other side of it. I waited, and even after not hearing a single sound for minutes, I knew that face was just waiting on the other side of my door. Although I was terrified, I hadn't heard another sound for some time, and eventually, I had succumbed to exhaustion. When I opened my eyes, I could see a faint sliver of light peeking out from underneath my doorframe. I gently cracked open my door and saw that there was light stemming from one of my windows. It was morning. Happiness that the night was over flooded my system. I walked over to my window and just stared at the blue sky for what felt like hours. My eyes drifted from the skyline towards the street in front of my house. There were two men standing directly underneath the street lamp outside. They were both wearing dark sunglasses and suits. They appeared to be looking up at the light repeatedly before turning back to one another. One of them then turned to look in my direction. I quickly ducked away from my window and peeked out once more. They seemed to be speaking with one another before a car rolled up and they both got inside and drove away. After getting ready and heading to work, I asked some of my coworkers if anything odd happened to them last night. They were all pretty caught off guard from my question. However, there were a couple of them that mentioned their streetlights outside their house had all gone off randomly. At this point, I'm not sure what to make of this whole situation. It seems like something out of a sci-fi TV show. Mysterious men in suits lurking around. That thing I saw standing outside my house last night. And those random warnings that came through my TV. None of it really makes any sense to me, but I'll try my best to keep you all as updated as possible. I guess for now, it's probably best to err on the side of caution. If you happen to receive a strange emergency broadcast through your TV, it's probably best to get out of your town. At least for a little while. Just to be safe.